Welcome to Returned to Honor. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Return to Honor. My name is Brett. I am grateful for everyone who has subscribed and continues to come back. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking and sharing the content here so that more can hear the messages that I'm trying to put out about recovery, about finding ourselves back in full fellowship with the church, regardless of whatever we've been afflicted with. And moving with the playlist and the work that I've been doing when it comes to the Book of Mormon, I want to do another dive in. And let's just talk for a second about why. So in other videos in the Book of Mormon playlist, I've talked about the admonitions and the directions and the counsel from President Nelson in the last few years. But let me pull this up again and let's just review it. Let me get to the right. There we go. So President Nelson, October Conference 2020, in his address, Embrace the Future with Faith. He said, "Few things build faith more than does regular immersion in the Book of Mormon." Now, I've talked about this word immersion in other episodes, but I do want to highlight that because it is so important. When we think about that, what is immersion? It's not just kind of dipping your toe in. It's not even wading. Immersion is full, deep going under. We are baptized by immersion. And so when President Nelson says, "Few things build faith more than does regular immersion in the Book of Mormon," I think he's doing a couple of things here. One, there is a promise. You're going to have your faith built. And with faith, we are then have the strength to do immeasurable amount of things. And he's telling us how to do this. And that is immersion. Not just opening it up once in a while, not just dabbling in it, but to really put yourself fully in. He goes on, "No other book testifies of Jesus Christ with such power and clarity. Its prophets, as inspired by the Lord, saw our day and selected the doctrines and truths that would help us most. The Book of Mormon is our Latter-day Saint survival guide." I love that. And I absolutely love the Book of Mormon. I love reading it. I love listening to the words, or reading the words and hearing the counsel that comes from these ancient prophets. Now, President Nelson gave another promise that I think is equally important, if not more so. In October 2017, the Book of Mormon, What Would Your Life Be Without It? He gives us a 3-part promise. And I hope that you've marked this, read this. Let me come down, because this is so powerful. This is so incredibly important and powerful. "I promise that as you prayerfully study the Book of Mormon every day." Now, let me highlight these like I did the other, because this is so very important. He gives us a pattern here. Prayerfully study the Book of Mormon, and then a how and a when every day. You will make better decisions every day. Oh, there's promise number 1. Prayerfully study the Book of Mormon every day. The second promise, if I can get that clear, I promise that as you ponder, so there's the next what we're supposed to do, ponder what you study. The windows of heaven will open, and you will receive answers to your own questions and directions for your own life. As he said in 2020, the Book of Mormon is our latter-day survival guide. As you ponder the word, what you study, you will receive answers to your own questions and directions for your own life. You will receive your own survival guide. How incredibly needed is that? Especially if you have found yourself in this space where you are stuck in transgression, if you don't know how to get out, if you're not sure what to do, and how to get back to that place that you long to be. How you can prepare yourself, as also President Nelson has been admonishing aggressively, to prepare for the second coming of Jesus Christ. Well, there are so many things that need to be done to do that. And you need to have your own personal survival guide. We do that with the second promise here. I promise that as you ponder what you study, so we think about it throughout the day, we stew on it, we let it sit and simmer in our thought. Then we will have answers and directions for our own life. Now this, I promise that as you daily immerse yourself in the Book of Mormon, you can be immunized against the evils of the day, and there are many, whether it's illicit drugs, pornography, the attacks on membership. We see so many people leaving and finding what they think is a better way. But against the evils of the day, even the gripping plague of pornography and other mind-numbing addictions. Now, this is so important because if we will follow this three-part promise and we build our own latter-day survival guide, you're going to have the strength. In fact, just last week, I was working with one of my clients. I'd been working with him to understand this promise. And he told me, said, I haven't been the best at it yet. He's getting better at every day. But he said, I came up to a time that would have been a trigger moment. It would have been one of those times when he had anticipated the ability and the opportunity to use. And he said, instead of looking for an opportunity to use, I started to automatically think of other activities that I could do instead. And he directly equated it back to making better decisions every day, as that promise gives. So I want to dive in on a really interesting chapter, 2 chapters actually, but there are some amazing principles and points in this. The first is Alma 60. Now, when we look at Alma 60, I started reading this and I saw something absolutely amazing. There is an activity that I have done for years with my clients. And in fact, it's an activity that so many therapists do that it's actually, there's jokes about it. And I had a client come in and say, I wondered when you were going to have me do this. A friend of mine had asked if I'd already had to do it. And that is the writing of the letter. But as I read Alma 60, and I read here where Moroni, they've finally taken back the city of Manti. The war in their area of the country is settled, at least quieted. And now he sits down and he writes Pahoran, who's the governor of the land, sitting on the judgment seat. Sitting in the judgment seat. He writes him a letter. Now this isn't just your everyday how you doing buddy letter. He says here, I direct mine epistle to Pahoran. Also, to all those who have been chosen by this people to govern and manage the affairs of this war. So right out, he is establishing the words I'm about to say, the things I'm talking about, and the people I'm talking to, this is for you. And then, for behold, I have somewhat to say unto them by the way of condemnation. So he's barely into this, and he immediately states his intention. Intention. He states his intention. He's getting their attention, but he's stating his intention. I'm about to rail on you. I'm about to tell you some things maybe you don't want to hear, but I've got to get this off my chest. And then he goes on and he talks about how he himself and all of his men, Helaman and his men, have suffered exceedingly great sufferings, even hunger, thirst, fatigue, and all manner of afflictions. But behold, were this all we had suffered, we would not murmur nor complain. Now immediately I was like, whoa, what? Wow. How many times have I complained because I'm a little bit hungry, I'm a little bit thirsty, I'm getting a little bit tired? And I start to get snippy, I start to get a little bit short, and I've been told that I can be a bear, and people don't want to be around me. And we joke about being hangry, so hungry that we're angry. And here he's saying, we've suffered hunger, thirst, fatigue, and all manner of afflictions. But if that's all it was, we wouldn't be complaining or murmuring. And then he says, but great has been the slaughter among our people. And he goes on and he talks about that for a minute. And here's where it turns. We desire to know the cause of this exceedingly great neglect. We desire to know the cause of your thoughtless state. And I guess I should have set it up here. So thousands have fallen by the sword, while it might have been otherwise, if ye had rendered unto our army sufficient strength and succor for them. Yea, great has been your neglect towards us. Now this, I'm glad I went back, because this is the first pivot. And we see here's what's been going on, here's what we've been suffering, and now he points the finger of blame. If you had not neglected us, if you had not left us to starve and to be, thirsty and to not have everything we needed, we wouldn't have lost so many in battle. And I want to know, here in verse 6, I want to know the cause of your neglect. Why did you leave us? Why did you leave us hungry? Why did you leave us empty? Why did you leave us needing? And now I put this in green because I'm seeing a little bit of a turn, maybe to jealousy. Can you think to sit upon your thrones in a state of thoughtless stupor while your enemies are spreading the work of death around you? So he's making some assumptions here, and he's beginning to make some allegations and some assumptions, and maybe his own jealousy that, here he is, you're sitting there in your defenses and you're sitting there on the throne while we're out here fighting and dying. And so that green for jealousy comes in. Yea, even they have looked upon you for protection, have placed you in a situation that you might have succored them. Yea, you might have sent armies unto them to have strengthened them, and have saved thousands from falling upon the sword. Again, putting blame to the government, to the governor, for why this was going on and why so many died. Verse 9, but behold, this is not all. Ye have withheld your provisions, insomuch that many have fought and bled out their lives because of the great desires which they had for the welfare of this people. They have done, yea, and this they have done when they were about to perish with hunger, because of your exceedingly great neglect towards them. Now, I want to pause here on this verse for just a minute, because there's a couple things going on. One, he's really laying it on heavy. They have fought and bled. They've bled out their lives because of their great desire for the welfare of this people. These are true patriots. These are true blue, valiant individuals. Where were you? You withheld your provisions. You wouldn't even support them. And then this they have done when they were about to perish with hunger. Now, two things are going on here. One, he is putting blame and he's pointing finger and he's saying this wouldn't have happened. And you've got these incredible people who have given their lives trying to defend the freedoms. And why could you do that? Why did you do that to them? You withheld your provisions from them. But bigger than that, I want to touch on something that we've talked about before. And that is this notion of the so I can. Now, if you've watched any of the videos that we've talked or that I've done and looked at what's going on, you'll know that this idea of so I can is really important. And when all of these wars started, there was a major push as to why they were so committed. And let me just jump over here. It's in Alma 43, in verse 9. Now the design of the Nephites was to support their lands and their houses and their wives and their children, that they might preserve them from the hands of their enemies, and also that they might preserve their rights and their privileges, yea, and also their liberty, that they might worship God according to their desires. Now, that verse establishes their true design. It establishes their goal or their so I can. I am doing this so I can experience or have whatever it is on the other side. Now, when we are battling with affliction, when we are battling with anything that keeps us from the temple, anything that keeps us from full worthiness, anything that is keeping us away from being able to fully embrace and have that honor to say that I have returned to honor, that I'm returning with honor, as the phrase typically goes. If we do not fully know and understand our declaration of purpose, our so I can, then it's going to be very easy to lose that focus. And so when I read this in this verse 9 of chapter 60, what I see here is him saying, many have fought and bled out their lives because of their great desire. And remember the desire? It's right here, verse 9 of Alma 43. To support their lands, their houses, their wives, their children, and to preserve them from the hands of their enemies, to preserve their rights, their privileges, their liberty, that they might worship God according to their desires. So there's that word again. Because of their great desire, they have done when they were about to perish with hunger. Now, I find that incredibly important, especially if for anyone who is struggling, anyone who is trying to wrestle their way through an affliction of any kind. It is hard, and it is going to be hard. But it's even harder, and it's practically impossible, if you do not have a full knowledge and understanding of your so I can desire. In chapter 43, it was clearly stated, why are we going to battle? Why are we willing to lose our life? Why are we willing to suffer hunger? Why are we about to do these things? And here, several chapters later, 17 chapters, we see that because of that desire, they were willing to go even into battle when they were about to perish with hunger. And so the question comes, what are you willing to do? What is it so important to you? How big and how purposeful is your desire? And how clearly defined is your so I can, that you would be able to fight your afflictions even when you're about to perish with whatever that hunger is. Because that's the type of thing that we need to do if we're truly committed. And when we're truly committed, we will do near about anything because of that desire, because of the clarity and that purpose that it brings. So I want you to think about that as you are contemplating these chapters, especially this one, and your own battle. And as I said in other videos, when we read these chapters, if we will take the title Lamanite and we will change that to affliction or addiction, it is illuminating how these chapters come to life for us. Now, he goes on and continues to rail against and towards Pahoran and the other leaders. And he begins to kind of justify here. He says, okay, I get it. The Lord suffereth the righteous to be slain, that his justice and judgment may come upon the wicked. Then there is, the wicked can be judged for something, judged for the murders. And so he's kind of trying to figure it out as he's writing. And this is an incredibly important thing to understand, why this letter activity that so many therapists have you do. Because here we see, as Moroni is going through and writing this, we see these different turns and shifts. Because the brain is going to process and move and release different pieces systematically for it when we put it down on paper. And the act of writing is a very freeing activity, even, more so even than talk. Now, verse 15, were it not for the wickedness which first commenced at our head, we could have withstood our enemies, that they could have gained they could have gained no power over us. And then in verse 16, so he stops here for a minute. He says, look, I get it. In the very beginning of this thing, we had the kingmen. They split us in half. And if it hadn't been that we were split in half, and we'd already suffered the civil war, then we wouldn't have been weak in numbers, weak in body. When the Lamanites, when the kingmen went and they stirred up the Lamanites to come against the Nephites, they had already been defeated a little bit and weakened. And so he's saying, look, Pahoran, I get it. We started this a little bit down. We started this weak. But still, why did you leave us alone? (18) But why should I say such concerning this matter? Say much concerning this matter. We know not, but what ye yourselves are seeking for authority. So he's saying, look, I don't know. Maybe you've gone to the kingman. Maybe you're up there and you're taking this great power. 19, again with some jealousy. Is it that you've neglected us because ye are in the heart of our country and ye are surrounded by security? Are we making it safe for you so you don't care? And then he comes back and he says, and he starts talking about the commandments of the Lord, and he's talking about his own covenants and his own commandments. And so he's all over the place in this thing, which is actually really good because it's a type of external processing that's so very, very important. And so one of the things that we need to do when we are in the process of overcoming our own affliction, and something that I teach and admonish so many times and with my clients, especially when we're dealing with these major afflictions, is to write a letter to your affliction, to your Pahoran, whatever it is. Now, here we're going to see in a moment, Pahoran hadn't abandoned them, but it felt like it. And Moroni was letting out all of his anger and everything inside of him, which is so important. It needs to be externalized. It needs to be released. Otherwise, it just sits there and festers. And so write a letter, whatever the object of your personal affliction or addiction is. sit down and write an Alma 60 letter to it. And if you will allow it to be just as open and honest and frank and pointed as Moroni's was to Pahoran, you're going to have an amazing experience. And then release it somewhere. Sometimes I've had clients bring their letters in and they talk about wanting to tear it up. They talk about wanting to burn them. They talk about wanting to never have to look at them again. One time I had a client write a letter. It was an incredible letter to pornography. And I said, what do you want to do with that letter? And he said, I want to keep it in my wallet. And he pulled it out of his wallet. And he would pull it out and read it whenever he needed a reminder so he wouldn't go back to where he was. And as he did that, he gained an amazing amount of strength and an amazing amount of power over his affliction. Now, I want to close with Alma 61, just a little bit of it, as we look at Pahoran, because this is something that is so important, so absolutely important. Because all of us are going to be hurt from time to time. All of us are going to be called out from time to time. And we're going to be put in a position where other people are going to express their dissatisfaction in us. And if we can respond the way that Pahoran responds here, or Pahoran, I say that weird sometimes, I'm sorry. It is going to make such an amazing amount of difference, especially if you are one who's trying to support someone who's battling their affliction, who is chasing and fighting their demons, and they come to you with some kind of a scathing letter, like we just looked at in Alma 60. If you can respond how Pahoran responded, I cannot tell you the difference it's going to make in bringing that person closer and not pushing them away and having them feel neglected, abused, and even further abandoned. So let's take a look at this. In Alma 61, Pahoran, writes his own letter back. And he says, I, Pahoran, who am the chief governor of this land, do send these words unto Moroni. Already you can almost get a sense his tone is different. Behold, I say unto you, Moroni, I do not joy in your great afflictions, yea, it grieves my soul. And so he immediately reaches out and gives some comfort and tries to appease him and give him some peace. Behold, there are those who do joy in your afflictions, yea, insomuch that they have risen up in rebellion against me, and also those of my people who are freemen, yea, and those who have risen up are exceedingly numerous. And so he starts to let him know, look, we are being overrun here. He said, freemen, let's see, I'm not sure why I underlined that, but so the freemen, they have driven me out from before them. Oh, there we go. Freemen have not come unto you. They have driven me out from before them. They haven't come fighting you, but they're still fighting us. In fact, they've driven me out, and I've had to flee to the land of Gideon. So notice what's going on here. Immediately, Pahoran doesn't rebuke him. He doesn't, start yelling back. He doesn't get angry that Moroni wrote such scathing words. He just simply says to him, I don't joy in your affliction, but we're also being inundated. He said, I sent a proclamation throughout this part of the land, and people are flocking to us daily in defense of their country and their freedom to avenge our wrongs. And then here they've got possession of the land and of the city of Zarahemla, and they have appointed a king over them. So here in these first 8 verses, we see him not being upset. In fact, let me just jump to it. Again, in verse 9, I don't know what it is about all these verse 9s. In your epistle you have censured me, but it mattereth not. I'm not angry. But do rejoice in the greatness of your heart. And so instead of getting upset, he recognized where it was coming from. That Moroni was calling him out. He was censuring him. He was being upset and laying all these allegations because of such an incredible man that he was and a great leader. And he's saying, where have you been? And he's recognizing Moroni's disappointment and his frustration. And then prior to doing that, he helps him understand, here's my situation. I got your letter. I don't joy in the afflictions you've had. This is what I've been dealing with. And it's okay. I'm not mad at you for railing on me, for censuring me. I totally get it. And it just proves what an amazing man you are. And then he restates his, so I can. My soul standeth fast in the liberty which God hath made us free. So, if we are truly committed, there are some things that we can learn here. One, looking at how hard am I fighting? Am I to the point of perishing by hunger, but yet still I go to battle? I haven't forgotten my so I can, because if we do that, and if we can stay committed in that, then we're going to have strength and power. If nothing else, we're at least holding tight to the covenants and the promises that we've made. And then we can be judged according to that. And if somebody is railing against us, can we follow Pahoran's example? Lean into them, comfort them, mourn with them, support them, lift them out, and help them know where you are. And if we can do that and not be upset, not let their words get to us and bring us down, then we will be able to overcome and achieve so much. So my encouragement for you as we come off of this, if you aren't a member of the Return to Honor program at WHOP.com, WHOP.com, then I would really encourage you to go and become a member there. I've put so many tools and resources there to help you find that recovery and coming back that you desire. But more than that, even just sit down and take a look at chapter 60 and begin writing your own epistle to your affliction. Talk about what it's taken from you. Talk about the despair and the heartache and how bad it has been. And really lay into everything that is there. Be open and honest with it. And the more raw that you can be as you talk, just like Moroni complains to Pahoran, the more powerful this exercise is. And you can do it as often as you need to, as new things arise, write a new letter. You can do it to multiple different afflictions. Because we need to get it externalized. We need to get it out so that it isn't inside causing us canker and destruction internally, emotionally, and mentally. And once you get it out and you read it and you look at it, now you're having an experience where you can do something with it, where you can process it. If you have somebody to do that with, that you're working with to overcome, great, take it to them. If not, that's what Return to Honor is for, so that you can have a group that are doing similar things. But I want you to look at this, because when you read, even here in the war chapters, as I've talked about before, you can find a survival guide for your own life, as President Nelson has talked about. The tools are here, and the strength is there if we read it with a little bit different perspective. And we look at, what are my battles? What are the wars that I'm in? Who are my enemies? And what are the things that I'm carrying with me that I'm fighting? But more than that, what is my desire, my true desire, that keeps me moving even when I'm about to perish with hunger? And if you can find that in yourself and identify that, it's amazing how strong you can become and how clear the work is and what has to be done. And so I really encourage you to do these activities. Read the Book of Mormon every day. Begin to study it every day so that you get that promise every day. And immerse yourself that you can be immunized against all manner of mind-numbing addictions. And you'll be able to say, I have recovered and returned to honor.